All right, we're going to call to order the October 15th meeting of the West Sacramento City Council, the West Sacramento Redevelopment Successor Agency, and Financing Authority. We're going to begin tonight, as we do each week, with the Pledge of Allegiance. So we'd like to invite our guests to join the council and the staff in the pledge, which tonight is going to be led by Mr. Michael Harkis.
You're leading it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the council did not meet in closed session this evening, and we have one member absent, Councilmember Sandine, and Councilmember Ledesma is with us by telephone. He is at a remote location in another state on a work assignment. Mr. Ledesma, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for acknowledging that.
All right. And so because we have one member who's at the meeting remotely, we'll be conducting all of our votes by roll call. It's not for the purpose of being intentionally overdramatic. It's just that that's required by state law when you have a member attending via telephone. All right, so we're going to move to item 1A, which is presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the City Council. As is noted on our agenda, we're prohibited by state law from having a discussion or taking action on any items that are brought up under this item, but it is an important opportunity for a public forum. We do ask that anyone wishing to address the council on this or any other item this evening to please fill out one of the yellow cards that's available near the front door and turn it into the city clerk. In front of the clerk is a timer that we use to make sure that everyone has a chance to get heard. And so to that end, we ask that all comments be limited to no more than 3 minutes. Also in front of the clerk is a good old-fashioned flip chart from the last century, and that simply indicates which agenda item the council is currently considering. We take the yellow cards all the way up to the conclusion of the staff report on any particular agenda item. So, for example, if you're here and you want to speak on item 12, just be sure to turn in your card before the conclusion of the staff report. Once the council's questions or the public testimony has begun, we don't take any additional speaking requests. We also recognize that for some folks, speaking in public can cause some anxiety and hives, and so we do ask that there not be any boos or catcalls or even applause or other demonstrations, that we try to maintain a civil discourse here in the chambers. So with that, we have a couple requests to speak under item 1A, and the first is by Bruno Nars.
This is Bruno Nars, and I heard they're facing a challenge in the city, beautiful city of West Sacramento, and excuse me, a little out of breath just getting here at the last minute.
Mr. Nars, could I ask, because I know some people at home are going to want to hear what you have to say, and that you can't hear you because the microphone's too far from you. Yes, that button will raise the microphone.
Right here. That's right. Okay. Well, anyway, I wrote a little praise to the city, that the city is so beautiful and has so much potential. And I feel that we're facing challenges, and we want to come through these challenges together. And I want to thank everyone who's done that hard work. And I just want to West Sacramento, just give me your attention, West Sacramento. I got to tell you something about them here. Hey, yo. Well, all right. So far, the city is growing, baby. And that's how the way business and progress goes. Oh, but we can't ignore the people on the north side like they're not alive. And I want to say, oh, the pain that people feel. Yes, the city administration can't get away with this kind of jive, because people on the north side are people too. Some people need to be busted. They need to be busted down. They don't need to have this high-ranking office if they do not care about other people. And I want to say the way that some people do their job, they need to be working in the sewer. And nothing could be truer. And that's the truth. All right? And I just want to say, come on now, West Sacramento. We're living in a city that could become one of the best. But first we need to clean up our police station and try to put some people in the administrative station up into the judicial test. We need to learn that this is not Marcos and it's not the 80s in the Philippines. And the pain from the north side. We need to get rid of some people and let them pass right from the scene. They need to pass from the scene. They need to be busted. That is what it should be. And if you are talking to me, we just will have to wait and see. If the people can get justice in West Sacramento, nothing could be truer. Nothing could be truer. Oh, wow. You know, sometimes people just need to be busted down so that they get real. All right? And then, you know, the city just doesn't need certain type of values. When folks are riding bikes and taking hikes while people at the city starve, somehow they think people can't just do without them.
The folks at home cannot
But
hear you.
They can't. People can't do without them while they're riding around in their $180,000 car. Oh, my goodness. I want it to be a better West Sacramento's future. And that's what I'm praying for. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Bruno
Mr.
has
White.
left the mic.
Thank you, Mr. White. Jaya Patel?
Tough act to follow.
Honorable Mayor, member of City Council, and fellow citizens, I have some issues and concerns that I would like to address.
All right, Ms. Patel, could I ask you the opposite, which is there's the button right to at your right hand. If you could press it so the microphone comes, the podium will come down just a bit, and the microphone, both for folks in the room to be able to hear you, but also the folks that are watching on TV or on the internet afterwards, so they can
Thank you.
hear everything that you have
Can
to
you
say.
hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I
Thanks.
have some issues regarding city-owned property right next door to my property on West Capitol Avenue. My property is 1809 and 1821 West Capitol Avenue, and city-owned property, I think, is 1801 West Capitol Avenue. Is constantly vandalized, my property, by the people that are there. And right now, as we speak, they broke the fence. All the fence that city owned is concrete fence. It's all down all the way, and people are sleeping on it. They're laying on it. They're throwing all kind of trash, the garbage, debris. They're breaking my motel rooms. They break my windows. Last few weeks ago, they broke 6 of my windows. Cost me more than $500 to replace. And they're constantly throwing trash, and 24/7, they're in and around, no matter how many times I call the police, I call even the code enforcement. It's not been taken care of. So if there was a ways, maybe you can put up the fence or take a better care of the property so I don't have that issues of breaking in on daily basis that we are going through this cycle. We've been there for 40 years, and this is last several years, this has been going on. And it's really hard to live in that kind of environment, not only for us, even for our guests. It's really, really bad. Even the bus stop on Merkley, not Merkley, but on the Poplar and West Capitol Avenue, constantly 24/7, as we speak, if you go down there, there is 10 people there, any time of the day and night. Even middle of the night, they scream, yell, they throw things, they break things, and we are putting up with that for a long period of time. And I would appreciate if you could do something about to have it taken care of. And people are also throwing trash on Merkley Avenue, and I'm being held responsible. It's not on my property, but I'm getting letter from code enforcement telling me that even though property is not mine, I have to clean up all the way to the middle of the street on Merkley Avenue, which is, I don't think which is fair or which is true. So if you can take care of that, and here are some pictures if you like to take. This is, I just taken it today. So if you want, you can look at it.
You might give it to the clerk, and she'll make sure the whole council gets a copy, as well as code enforcement.
So yeah, that's about it, if you can do something about it.
1809, 1821.
1809 and 1821, and there is also 1841 at Westwood Motel. They're all around, and that cycles, it's constant 24/7. And we have security, they don't listen to them either. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate for listening.
All right, and Pete Klopsch?
Although I think it might be more effective if I just read it, even though that doesn't look cool. There's no teleprompter or anything like that. Otherwise, I'll mess up and not be able to do it in a reasonable time frame. First of all, I want to thank the city of West Sacramento, the mayor, the city council, the financial, the accounting, anyway, the mayor and the city council, the city government, for not overspending during the boom years, what we call the real estate bubble, for not committing the city to projects we couldn't afford. As a result, we are not facing the kind of challenges that cities like Stockton, Vallejo, San Bernardino County. I don't know if anyone remembers, New York City went through a bankruptcy in the 1970s, and I think they were bailed out by the federal government. A lot of people think that responsible financial stewardship is like automatic pilot, but it isn't. It's good planning, good decisions, and I want to thank you because we haven't had a major struggle with basic city services as a result. The one other issue that I really feel is important is public transportation. I have a car, I have the means to own a car, but more and more people on the lower, let's say, third financially are finding car ownership more and more difficult because it's becoming more and more expensive. And they find themselves living in areas where all of a sudden they can't afford a car anymore, but the public transportation system, it's okay, but it could be better. So this proposed trolley over connecting the downtown corridor to the West Sacramento, that is a step in the right direction. Anybody who thinks that that's not, doesn't see the handwriting on the wall. I lived in downtown Sacramento, Midtown, for 10 years before I moved over the river to this side about 15 years ago. And back then, there were parts of the Midtown, downtown area that were blighted. The money and the young people, professionals, they want to live in walkable communities. And if you go downtown on a Friday or Saturday night, it's booming. The restaurants are booming, the coffee shops are booming, the sports bars are booming. Everything is booming. They're starting to build high-rises. People want to live in environments where it's possible to live there, work there, do your shopping there, go to a doctor, go to a sports bar, have a couple beers, walk home, and not worry about having to. Anyway, the trolley project, I look forward to it, and any enhancements to frequency of public transit, step in the right direction.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Janice Holt?
Hello, I'm Janice Holt. I am with Yolo County Housing. I'm the General Managing Director. I just want to take a couple minutes to invite you all and your staff and any members of the public that are interested to a 30-year celebration that we're having at for the redevelopment of Riverbend Manor 1 and 2. And just for a little bit of history, Riverbend Manor 1 and 2 was converted in 1984. It was the old Washington school site. It was very blighted. It had been vandalized, a lot of graffiti, and the housing authority purchased that from the school district and then renovated it into 60 units of senior and disabled housing that serves as a public housing complex today to those very low income that are both seniors and disabled. So we're holding a little afternoon tea on Thursday, October 23rd from 2:30 to 4. We hope that one or many of you can join us. We pretty sure Mark will be there. So we'd love to have you along to celebrate this great time. And I just want to comment, as you may know, that was also the home of the senior center for, well, from 1987 till when the new center got built. So we feel especially important that City of West Sacramento has representation at this celebration because they were a big part of what this community is. So thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so those are all the requests we have under item 1A, and the city manager's taking note of some of the specific items for follow-up or action. So we'll proceed to item 1B, which is council communications. Are there any reports or other communications this evening? Let me start. Mr. Ledesma, do you have any reports this evening?
I do. I want to report that on October 9th, we had a meeting of the Redevelopment Successor Agency Oversight Board, and we took up just one item, which we'll actually be seeing a little later in the agenda regarding the stone lot facility. So it was about making sure we can have the available means to demolish the existing buildings out there. So we'll be hearing about that in a few. So that's all I have to report.
Mr. Kristoff.
Yeah, a couple, Mr. Mayor. Number one, regional sanitation. Regional San, one of our projects right now is drafting policies for ethics and for ethics training for our Regional San employees. All of us as elected go through regular ethics training, and we have ethics classes that we have to attend. But this is also for the employees. We have a very, very large project, and $2 billion project, and we just want to make sure that all the employees know exactly what steps to take in this if they're asked questions. The other one was West Sac-SAFCA, which is the flood agency, and we had a workshop on real estate acquisition and the real estate acquisition process. We're getting ready to, and we have made a few proposals to various property owners for their property so that we can construct our levee and flood protection system. And so we have a regular process that we have to go through with not only state and feds approval, but at the same time the Corps also needs to be part of the process. And we're just at the very beginning. I'm sure my fellow council members will be hearing from some of the property owners, but at the same time, we have a regular process that we do go through, and we will try to be as fair and reasonable as possible. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kristoff. Nothing from Mayor Pro Tem Johansson. I have 2 items to report. The SACOG board at our last meeting approved some significant grants. So the council will recall in July we approved a request to the state and to the region for a variety of proposals principally for biking under the state's active transportation program, and we did not win any of the state grants. So that meant automatically our applications were forwarded to the regional agency for their consideration, where we scored very highly. And so one of our proposals ranked number 2 in the region, and that's the citywide bike lane closure project. It's a $525,000 grant, and the council recall that's for closing gaps essentially between parts of our existing bike lane system. So all over the city in various locations, in some major arterial streets, but also in some smaller ones as well, to try to create a complete network of bike facilities, lanes, or routes throughout the city. So that was a significant grant. The other project that we had that scored well but was not funded yet, at least, is the West Capitol Avenue, the Paseo project, as part of the Grand Gateway project that we've been moving forward. That was a request for almost $600,000. We didn't get it, but we ranked number 1 among the losers, which means that if any of the other projects don't don't come to fruition, which happens quite a bit in other agencies, that we're first in line for any of the residual funds for the West Capitol Paseo project. So I'm not hoping anyone else will fail, but if that were to happen, then that project is in good shape. We had other projects as well in the competition, and they did. I mean, as a whole, West Sacramento did really well in that process. But it is designed to make sure that we don't get all of the money, and that some other jurisdictions, some of the other 21 cities in the regions in the 6 counties get a chance for it as well. But that was positive news. Then last week, the chief of police and I were at the Clinton Center in Little Rock for the 50th anniversary of the COPS program for a national mayors and police chiefs meeting with President Clinton and Attorney General Holder and the director of the COPS program and some key members from the COPS team around both celebrating the history of the COPS program and its contribution towards dramatically increasing the number of officers on the street in this country over the years of its existence, but also in transforming professional development and the community policing orientation of police departments throughout this country, including our own. So partly it was for celebration, but really more around what's next and how to deepen and broaden the ethic of community policing, particularly in light of what's occurred in Ferguson and elsewhere. And we had a panel from the mayor of St. Louis and the police chief of St. Louis and others around that Ferguson topics in particular. But a 2-day session around how to modernize policing even further in a way that is effective and that collaborates with schools and social services and other local providers and meets the community and neighborhoods on their own terms. So I thought it was a useful summit. I mean, it was mostly larger cities than us, but that's usually the case at these national meetings. But it was a good opportunity also to build some networks and connections with some of the COPS folks as well. That was followed by, in the same location, by a national mayor summit on inland ports. It's the first time we've ever had a national meeting on the inland port sector. Every time we've had a port meeting for the last 10 years that I've been going to these, they've always been about the seaports, which suck all the oxygen out of the room and all the money for deepening. So this was a great opportunity to really focus on, well, what about all the ports on the rivers of the U.S.? Post-Panama Canal, there's a lot of investment that needs to get made in the seaports, and we've talked before here about why that has made it almost impossible for us to secure money to deepen our own ship channel. But there's still a lot of key things for the federal government to do that would support inland port development. So I made a presentation on sort of the changing nature of the global maritime market and shipping, and how smaller inland ports like ours, like Little Rock's, have to adapt. And there was a lot of interest in the work that we've done, and also in the experiments that we've done on the Marine Highway project. The lead for the Maritime Administration, whatever MARAD stands for, I don't even know, but the federal government's lead maritime agency that oversees the Marine Highway project was there. She was the one that read our proposal. So disappointed that Stockton canceled their portion of it, but I think everyone agreed that the long run is still the economics, the fundamentals, and the environmental indicators in particular are all still there. We just have to figure out how to do it, and it's not impossible. Europe does this quite effectively. The use of the inland ports as part of the supply chains that increase throughput and reduce the environmental impacts from trucking and rail. But China doesn't do it very well, and we don't do it very well yet. And there are certainly things that smaller ports like us can do, but we do need some help from the federal government to make sure our channels at least don't get any shallower because of failure of the federal government to adequately fund dredging. So there'll be some additional follow-up with that. The Corps was the leadership of the Corps of Engineers was there. They reaffirmed their support for the work that we're doing in West Sacramento, but also their commitment to work with us on the Congress to get additional funding for at least maintenance dredging. All right, we have no appointments to boards and commissions this evening. We have the call for nominations or for applications is out for boards and commissions. In the absence of an urgent need, it's not my intention to make any appointments prior to the election, but the call is out there to begin the process a little bit early for folks to apply in the next term of appointments as well. So unless some commission is unable to reach a quorum and needs to make a decision early, it's not my intention to bring any additional appointments for the remainder of this period before the election. All right, with that, then we'll move to presentations. Item 2, which is a presentation of a proclamation. Sorry, before we do that, let me know, the city manager's requested that we remove item 8 from the consent agenda, move it to the regular portion of the agenda. That's the only change to our agenda this evening, and so if there's no objection, that'll be the order. So item 2 is a presentation of a proclamation recognizing the 125th anniversary of CHQA and declaring October 30th, 2014 as CSHQA Day in the city of West Sacramento. Is there a motion on the proclamation?
Second.
It's been moved by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson and seconded by Mr. Christoph. Is there any discussion on the item? Mr. Ledesma, do you have any comments?
I do not.
All right, then I'd ask the clerk to call the roll on item 2.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Aye.
Councilmember Christoph?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson? Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so that motion carries and the proclamation is adopted. Mike, if you could come to the...
Up here as well.
Is this going to play Bruno Mars music? Or?
No,
Okay.
I promise.
Empire of the Sun, what's coming out of there? Oh, okay, it's just camera. All right, so it's my pleasure to present the proclamation of the West Sacramento City Council recognizing the 125th anniversary of CSHQA Day as October 30th, 2014. So whereas Klein Small Hamilton Terry Associates, okay, now I see it's HQA, it's easier now, is celebrating 125 years of serving clients in the practice of architecture and engineering and 25 years in the Sacramento region. And whereas the firm was first established as William S. Campbell Architects in Boise, Idaho in 1889, and whereas it was established here in West Sacramento in 2009, and whereas architects Glenn Klein and his friend Neil Small joined the firm during the first post-war boom, and both were strong city leaders and designed many iconic projects for Fortune 500 firms and regional universities, including Boise Cascade headquarters, Morrison-Knudsen World Headquarters, the University of Idaho Kibbe Dome, and the Boise State University Basketball Pavilion. And whereas after Robert Hamill and Alan Quinteri joined in the 1970s, the firm became Klein Small Hamill Quinteri Associates. And whereas they wisely shortened the name to they could have shortened it and changed it to something easier to say, CSHQA in 1985. And whereas the firm planned and designed the restoration and renovation of the historic Idaho State Capitol building, and whereas the firm designed hundreds of retail grocery stores across the nation, which was the original impetus for establishing the Sacramento office, and whereas the firm added international work when it became licensed to practice in Alberta and British Columbia, Canada, and whereas the firm provides a wide range of design services for retail, grocery and pharmacy, aviation, corrections, healthcare, assisted living, corporate, industrial, and hospitality, sports, and entertainment clients, and whereas the firm became experts in energy efficient and sustainable design, earning LEED Silver, Gold, and Platinum certifications for retail, educational, civic, healthcare, research, training, and multifamily projects. And whereas the firm is also experienced in Green Globe certifications, earning 6 consecutive awards for one client in several Western states. And whereas CSHQA appreciates its many client relationships past, present, and future, now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of West Sacramento does hereby proclaim the 125th anniversary of CSHQA and proclaim October 30th, 2014 as CSHQA Day in the City of West Sacramento. Congratulations, Michael.
Thank you. Thank you for going through that. Can I get a photo?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, that's what that's for.
Yeah. Just great. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
That'd be great. Beautiful. Thank you. All right. Thank you. And take just a moment.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Cabaldon and council members. You can see why we did shorten and go to an acronym in 85. And you're all invited to the celebration on the 30th of October at our office. I first became acquainted with West Sacramento 14 years ago when I moved from Kansas City, go Royals, to Sacramento and joined the firm Vitello and Associates when DLR acquired them. So this project was one I worked on back then. So we do city halls as well.
after 125 years, you probably do about everything there is to do in the built environment. As a resident here in West Sac for 12 years now, it's exciting to see the community, watching the community developing the fabric that's woven into a very vibrant sense of place, and that is very exciting to see happen. I've enjoyed being on EDAC for about 10 years now, and look forward to continuing that commissionership, and then and monitor the incentives or the initiatives and strategic planning that this council and city is about. So we share your passion, and thank you very much.
Did you do that? Remember the part about no demonstrations? All right. All right, thank you. Congratulations. That brings us to the consent agenda, which is items 3 through 14. And just to note that we have at our desks a revision to the report for agenda item 13 on the Transportation Development Act claims. But are there any items on consent and the item 8 has already been removed from the consent agenda? So are there any other items to remove or any items for question or comment? Mr. Ledesma, any?
None.
All right, then is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Ledesma and seconded by Mr. Christoph. All those in favor, oh, sorry, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Councilmember Christoph?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson? Yes. Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, with that, the consent agenda is adopted. That will bring us to item 8, which is Tower Bridge, no, not Tower Bridge District, the Bridge District TBD Fest post-event report. Mr. Johnston.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Here tonight to provide you with an update regarding the TBD Festival that was held in the Bridge District on October 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Over the years, West Sacramento has hosted a number of successful events at the Riverwalk Park, Raley Field, and in the new Bridge District. The Tower Bridge Festival was by far and away the largest event that we've ever hosted and been involved with here in West Sacramento. The TBD organizers first contacted West Sacramento Police Department in late July regarding this event, and shortly after, Officer Mark Marquez with the West Sacramento Police Department met with the organizers regarding permitting requirements. Once we reviewed those and the scope of the event was determined, City Manager Tuttle requested that a committee be formed to work with the group on getting the necessary permits and kind of work with them along through the process. Our first meeting was held with the organizers on August 26th, and because this was a first-time event and the organizers were affiliated with the Barn Project, soon to happen in the Bridge District, we probably took a softer approach than we would have with a normal applicant with an event of this size. Representatives from the Police Department, the Fire Department, Community Development, and Public Works were all present in that committee. Meetings were held weekly up until the day of the event, and we actually walked the event site day of prior to the gates opening, and actually we're making adjustments as late as the opening day. Throughout the time that we met with the organizers of the event, they addressed any issues that staff brought up during the month or so that we had to work those out, and it was a very good working relationship, and they were very eager to make sure that whatever we requested came to pass. The event opened on early Friday afternoon and ended shortly after midnight on Sunday. The reported approximate attendance was 21,000 during the course of the 3-day event. From a public safety perspective, the West Sacramento Police Department was on site for the entire event and reported that overall the event was a success, primarily because there were no major incidents. The West Sacramento Fire Department was also had personnel, but they rotated through the event during the entire course of the weekend, and they also reported that there were no serious items or injuries or issues. By far and away, the most significant and probably the most underestimated issue was amplified sound. Yolo County Dispatch reported that on Friday evening there were 12 complaints filed, noise complaints. On Saturday there were 8 complaints, and on Sunday there were 48 complaints filed. And those complaints came from as far away as South Natomas and even Clarksburg, which was a surprise to us. Throughout the event, staff did monitor the noise levels, both while the music was playing and prior to the music beginning. And based on the readings that we were getting in the 24-hour averages, we felt like we were within compliance with our current ordinance. That said, we do recognize that the noise was a nuisance to many of our residents based on the reports and other things that we heard. As a result of that, we will be exploring changes to our current ordinance. We do believe that by implementing some current technology that's now available, we can better monitor what's coming out of that event and actually reduce some of those impacts. We had a debrief yesterday with the organizers of the event. They're in the room this evening. Discussed a number of issues, including a longer planning process, give us more time to work through some of the issues, a request that we get some of the engineering documents and the compliance certificates submitted earlier in the process. We talked about modifying the hours of the event. We talked about assigning a city liaison to be on site for the entire event, just to coordinate some of the things that were going on. And also the possibility of perhaps bringing in some professional sound monitoring if this event takes place again, which we hope it does. We thought the debrief was productive, with both sides agreeing to work on a better event for next year. We have already started the process of reviewing and modifying our special event ordinance and our noise ordinance, and we hope to have some recommendations back to the council for your consideration by the end of the year. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions at that point?
People who want to speak.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Well, thanks, Bob. So on the noise complaints, it looks like 12 were Friday, 8 were Saturday, 48 were Sunday. On the ones on Sunday, do you have the timing of those complaints? Was it more a question of time or the volume?
It wasn't, the report we got from the dispatch, they weren't timed. They didn't indicate the time.
Okay.
We assumed they came on later in the evening, but I don't know that for sure. We could get that information and find out.
Yeah, because I know just, from where I live, it was noticeably different between Friday and Saturday and Sunday. It wasn't that noticeable at all. But it'd be good to know because,
Okay.
I think it went on to 12:15 Sunday, Monday morning, a little bit late. But so, I'm glad they were able to pull it off. I think it's, we're going to be going through growing pains when we start doing this. We've always talked about having an active riverfront, and I know Raleigh Field has done events there. So this is something I think that we are going to want to do. But obviously there's ways that we can mitigate either time or noise. Just see what the technology is, see which way the stages are turned, and there's ways I think you could mitigate that to a certain extent. And but I'm glad to see that there's no safety concerns, which is really one of our main concerns that happens, and everything went smoothly. It's a little loud for some folks. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Christoph?
Couple questions. Bob, we first put the noise ordinance in place when we had Raleigh Field. And Raleigh Field has had concerts. And we've maintained that the ordinance that went in place was successful especially during the concerts at Raleigh Field. I have to assume there was since Rayleigh Field sits in a bowl, so to speak, that might help as far as the outside noise. Because, I mean, I received a number of calls, especially Friday night. People couldn't watch television. Their windows were rattling and whatever it was. And I said, well, I'll look into it. I hear it myself, you know, and I'll look into it as soon as I can. So I did, and then I reported back to them. And I think there's a couple things that really need to be looked at very closely, and that is the decibel levels, so that we don't have that. I'm sure the TBD people can make sure that those decibels stay within a range that is acceptable to the community. And you have to realize one of the other things that's going to happen in the very near future is you are going to have a lot of houses and apartments and condos and whatever else it is built in that very vicinity. They'll start to get occupied. And we need to make sure that, I know that the property owners and that they look forward to this kind of energy and to this kind of thing happening within the city of West Sacramento, but at the same time it can't be so loud that it really disrupts people's lives. And then the other thing is the reason Sunday was, I think, excessive was because people were getting ready to go to work Monday, and the noise was disruptive. And so I think that some thought really needs to be given as far as the timing and the times of this. So anyway, I think those are the two major issues that I heard, and I really do want this noise ordinance to come back as quickly as we can get it, because I don't like the idea of averaging it out, because that allows at certain times the noise to be way too loud, and then at other times you'll have different acts that are on that, you know, they're not loud at all. But but the averaging thing really doesn't work for me.
Okay.
So, okay.
The report's great, and we'll hear some additional comments, including from the organizers, which I'm looking forward to, because it is, I mean, we focused on the enforcement compliance issues, but this was one mark of an advanced species is the ability to have two contrary thoughts in your head at the same time. The noise was definitely an issue, and the response to it was occurring on site and subsequently and for next year. That in no way diminishes the fact that we had a remarkably successful event that put West Sacramento, showed West Sacramento in the best light possible for visitors of all kinds, but also for folks in town who were attending in large numbers. And we're achieving exactly what we were hoping for in our riverfront, exactly what we're trying to do in terms of being a place where young people of all ages, but folks who like that kind of music, feel like they are a part of the town. It accomplished all of that. And everyone that came, the dust aside, which also got resolved to a large extent, had a fantastic time, but also loved the place and loved that they were on the river, that they were for folks who live here, that they were in their hometown and being able to show off to all of their visitors, this is a great venue. I live here. This is my town. And so precisely what we have planned for and envisioned on the riverfront occurred at that festival, and it achieved a lot of recognition and a lot of kudos, both locally, regionally, nationally. Which is not always apparent to everyone, because it is a particular demographic, just like everything else is in town. And so you may not, a lot of folks may not have seen how much of an impact this had on the community and our reputation and the climate for future events and for entertainment. One of the early complaints I got was a good reminder of why we need to be careful also about how we react quickly and completely and totally and not nuclear. And that was, look, I can't believe that this noise, you need to do something about this and the fireworks and the church bells. And this is the problem, right? So everyone's got something in the community. A good chunk of the other year, we're dealing with sound complaints about duck hunters in Southport. I live 2 blocks from Raleigh Field, and although the fireworks are enjoyed by everyone in the town and the region, they disrupt my life during that period of time, and apparently church bells do for someone else. That's part of living in a place, is that you accept a little bit of annoyance with other people's lives around you, because we're not living out in the middle of nowhere. We're in a city. What became a problem at TBD Fest on Friday was it was beyond annoyance, right? It was more than that you could hear it. I can't believe anyone in Clarksburg or South Natomas actually had their windows rattling, but they could hear it. But that's actually not the purpose of our ordinance. Right. If it were every day, it would be an issue. But once in a while, to have noise that you can hear is not really the issue. But when your doors and windows are rattling, when you can't hear, through headphones, you can still hear the thing happening. When your earplugs aren't working, then it's a problem. And so Friday definitely was an issue, and that was from virtually all reports. That was fixed for Saturday and Sunday. And maybe it was fixed by having more people on site to absorb the noise. I don't know, but that was definitely, we and the concert promoters in particular, attacked that issue and resolved it. And so whatever we learned from that, and we learned from additional, sound analysis, we ought to apply to make sure that we avoid that level of disruption to people's lives as occurred on Friday. And then clearly Sunday night was a problem in both the fact that we had permitted all the way till midnight, and that then that the festival actually went on for an additional 15 minutes because bands are difficult to control. But that's predictable in some sense. All bands are difficult to control when they have the microphone. So you can assume that that's the case. So to me, I think all the steps that were taken we need to reinforce them and look at some of the steps that are here. We ought to be dialing back Sunday night in particular a couple of hours. But we should put this into the perspective of the overall noise contours that us in the urban part of the city are living with all of the time, right, and the various conflicts that we're going to have to deal with as we go forward. Because there's nothing this was not worse than fireworks every 2 nights in a row at Raleigh Field for those of us that live close to there. Next year will be more of an issue as more buildings start to get built in the Bridge District around this site. That will also drive more of the sound over across the river. But it will definitely be less of an issue in terms of neighborhoods here, because the largest number of complaints that I was receiving was from the State Streets neighborhood. Right. That noise profile, it can't be precisely predicted until you actually do something like this. Right? You can do a lot of theoretical analysis about where noise might go, and we got a lot of that right, but you can't actually know until you do it. And in that neighborhood, it felt like it was, and I walked and biked over there during the concert, and it was a problem on Friday. So we ought to pay attention to it. We ought to be fixing it, but that shouldn't in any way dampen our pride at what occurred at that festival, and how much excitement and energy, fun, entertainment, and future investment that brought to the community. Some folks, I saw said, the city's not enforcing noise because we're making a huge amount of money on this festival. Let's just put that to rest. I don't think anybody made money on this festival. The city certainly did not. There wasn't a financial stake. Our stake was that since incorporation, our residents, when they voted to incorporate, and virtually every city council election since then, have said, we want to do stuff on the river. What's wrong with you crazy people? Why don't we have more activities on the river? And that's what our objective was with this. We learned a lot of lessons. We did course corrections in the middle, and we can fix some more as we go forward. But it was it really was a fantastic event, especially if you like that kind of music, which I warmed up to it as we went through. Yeah. So the one other sort of technical piece I would suggest is if with an independent noise consultant or otherwise, the noise management and attendee needs to be separated. If you're enjoying the concert, you need to not be in charge of managing the noise enforcement. Those have to be distinct roles to avoid a conflict of interest. So. Mr. Christoph.
One quick question. One of the questions that was asked of me was, did we violate our own noise ordinance?
We don't think so, but what I've discovered over the course of the last couple of weeks is it's very, very complicated, how it's recorded, the 24-hour average, and that's pretty much what it says in the ordinance. And we actually, and it may have been a mistake, but we actually used the condition that's in the conditional use permit for the barn. That's what we used as our benchmark, and I understand that that's pretty close, if not right on, with what we use at Rayleigh Field, which is different than a standard that we use out in Bridgeway Lakes, for example, when we have a wedding at the boathouse and we start to get complaints from some of the neighbors across the lake. So I think that's why in this particular instance, we really need to look at that and try to get at what you're talking about rather than the 24-hour averages. Maybe look at, something that's happening during the course of the actual event or the actual concert. We do understand that there are other ordinances around. Monterey just adopted one, so did Napa Valley for some of the bigger concerts that they hold there. And I think that's what we're going to look at is maybe a model for what we do in the Bridge District. But we're still looking at that. We have a meeting next week to discuss more about that.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a couple of
Yeah,
comments.
Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you. First of all, thanks, staff, for bringing back this report so quickly back to us just a couple of weeks after the event, gathering information. Obviously, we all received emails or calls regarding the noise. And, I don't want to belabor the issue around the sound ordinance. I agree with a lot of the comments that were made already by my colleagues and my staff about how we want to approach this and in a way that's thoughtful about what we're actually trying to achieve, not just on the riverfront, but around the city. I think that's important. I was about to bring up the noise ordinances or the noise complaints I hear down at Bridgeway Lakes, the park at Bridgeway Lakes, and not because of weddings at the facility. When there's baseball going on there or at Memorial Park, that's when we get those complaints too. So I think it's just we need to be thoughtful around what it is we're trying to achieve, and those types of events that are going to be expansive on the riverfront. I think that's just one of the messages I'll echo that I've heard so far. I want to echo again what the mayor said. It was an amazing event. I went on Saturday night with my daughter, and I think the thing that I walked away with was, obviously we're learning. It was a new venture for the organizers, or at least on this scale. Certainly on this scale for us, the largest sort of festival activity we have undertaken. But I think that the thing I walked away with just the positive activity that I saw on the waterfront, and people around the city talking about it. And I understand the folks who were inconvenienced on especially Sunday night with the noise. But overall, it just was an outstanding venue to see our city showcased that way. And a couple of things I did observe too was because on social media was a way to sort of monitor what was happening, what the thoughts were. I saw a lot of patience and a lot of tolerance in the community, asking what the noise was, and folks that were getting that information. They weren't quite sure what TBD Fest was on Thursday night, but on Friday they figured it out, and they understood when they saw the crowds and the media coverage and the newspaper articles that there was something really cool happening on the riverfront. And so I did see a lot of folks that had the patience and tolerance. I also want to sort of note that the visitors that came, I was seeing notes that people were coming from Southern California, from the Bay Area to come to this event, and a tremendous amount of respect they had for our community. I was probably most worried about traffic, about incidents on the river, just other types of incidents with bringing together a large amount of people for 3 days. And I just, from what I'm hearing, and Bob, maybe you can address this, I haven't heard of any problems whatsoever. And in fact, walking around at 10:30 at night with my daughter and my niece, who enjoyed it, you felt totally safe. Everyone was in a friendly mood, and that was definitely a positive. And maybe, Bob, if you want to interject at this point, if you heard or any other police incidents or emergency incidents that occurred.
No, as I said earlier, nothing, nothing of any critical nature. I mean, there were a few, it was reported back to us that Rock Med, which was the med tent there, had some, dehydration due to the hot days and some things like that, but really nothing of much seriousness. It was a well-run, well-managed event.
So terrific, and again, it's a lot of work by our police force. I saw them out there. So, again, I think there's a lot of positives that came out of it, and with every event, especially one of this visibility, we can learn from. So I'm open for learning more and working on how we can adjust going forward. But I appreciate the report back. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ledesma. I actually think the point, we got 12 complaints on Friday, which was the worst night in terms of noise. That wasn't that only 12 people were bothered by the noise. It was that the vast majority of other folks in town were like, well, I put up with this for tonight. This is driving me crazy, but there's something happening on the riverfront. It's good for the city. I'll deal with it. Now, if we were doing this every weekend, we would have hundreds or thousands of complaints, but we're not. And if we were hosting the Olympics here, we would have some significant disruption to all of our lives while we had the honor of hosting something of that scale. But we have a lot of noise and a lot of other impacts. And 21,000 people, going through the turnstiles at that festival was a gigantic undertaking. Mm-hmm. And as you've indicated, we had more incidents at Sacktoberfest with 10% of the people than we had at TBD Fest. And so, on most indicators, it was really strong. So, just that we need to be surgical about how massively we react on the noise issues. I worry about just shifting away from 24 hours to something more direct immediately without really thinking it through, because the fireworks and the duck hunting does not meet that test. Right. If we say no, it's just in the moment there's a limit, then the other activities in the city that people are well used to and appreciate in town would also be threatened. And so there's a trade-off, there's a balance. All of us enjoy some things, and all of us are creating impacts on each other for other things. And so let's just be thoughtful about as we go. And we have time. There's not another TBD Fest scheduled for next month.
We do
have
have
a little bit of time to work
That's
this
a
out.
nice thing. Yeah.
All right. So why don't we ask we have a couple of requests to speak, and one of them is from the organizer. So let me ask Clay Nutting to come forward.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I just want to take an opportunity. A lot of the topics have been covered tonight already, but wanted to provide a little bit of brief background on the event. We started 7 years ago as a one-day celebration of the creative community in the region. We recognized that there was a lot to celebrate, and that the platform could also be expanded to something that we dreamed about like this year. The Bridge District was a very compelling place for this event for a lot of reasons. It's an exciting, burgeoning community that represents a lot of what we're very passionate about. We're passionate about the community. We're passionate about building culture. And what we tried to accomplish with this event in 3 days was kind of a concentrated version of what we believe is a very vibrant, exciting part of our region, which is the arts community, the culinary community, from the chefs coming together to the restaurants, to local boutiques, to the artists, and then, of course, the music as well. There are plenty of positives that we can discuss. We had a payroll budget of just under $250,000. We were responsible for over 700 hotel bookings in the region. We had people coming from South America, from Vancouver, from San Francisco, from Los Angeles, flying in for the day or for the weekend and experiencing a community that we're really proud of and that we wanted to spotlight and showcase. And so in a lot of ways, those things were accomplished. We've had coverage in the New York Times, the Huffington Post, Vice, Nylon Magazine, and many other national publications, as well as plenty of regional coverage as well. We're really proud of that, and we're proud to have brought the event to the community. But with that, there are challenges and there were issues, and I wanted to take this opportunity to let you know that we've been proactive in reaching out to the city and letting them know that we're willing and want to make changes to accommodate the needs of the entire community, not just our festival goers. My business partner, Mike Hargis, and I are very humble people, and we're listening to everything good and bad, and we want what's best for the community and for the event, and we look forward to hopefully a very successful future to come with TBD as well. Thank you. Any questions? Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Jose Galvan?
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, ladies, fellow citizens. I just wanted to compliment West Sac PD and everyone involved with the traffic. My wife commented that during the festival, there was nowhere near as crazy as we would have expected it to be. I'm a huge music fan, and I remember being stuck in traffic up at Arco Arena, or even going downtown to different venues. So I thought it was totally smooth. I am a resident of the State Streets, and at around 11:45, trying to put down my toddler and feeling the wrath from the missus, I, in desperation, called the non-emergency number. I used to live in Midtown, kitty corner to Harlow's. I know that sometimes you just got to put up with noise, but we moved to the State Streets and purchased a property there because I am now raising a family, and I would like to be able to go to sleep and rest before we go to that. I understand that sometimes there's fireworks, not that big of a deal. The constant thump, 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 it was bad. So I went ahead and downloaded a Decibel app to go ahead and see it. And the Decibel app, I thought, was not really indicative of the true impact of it. So I was going to ask if there's any way of checking it. I know there was talk of some other technologies in measuring the actual impact. And I know that there's physics involved, wind, how many people. Councilman Kristoff mentioned being in the bowl, cutting down on that. So I just wanted to see if those would be put into play for the next year. I have nothing against the music. I understand it's a great benefit for the cultural activities and for everything. But if we could get it to a reasonable level, it would improve the quality of life of folks there. I don't want to move again. I like my city. I like my house. I love my neighborhood. And it was very distressing to have to deal with that 3 nights in a row, although Saturday night wasn't as bad. And so kudos to you, Mr. Mayor. I know there was something that happened between then. And the last point I wanted to make is that I keep hearing, oh, well, only X amount of people called, or only so-and-so complained. When I went to Mass on Sunday morning, I spoke with a lot of people, and upwards of maybe 15, 20 people all came up to me and said, Jose, you're involved in the school and you're involved in the church. Can you talk to someone? I mean, what happened? I said, well, I'll see. And we looked for Chris. Hi, Chris. And I said I was going to ask him. He's a fellow parishioner. And I said, well, I don't know what we would do. I urged them to call the non-emergency number, cognizant of the fact that we don't want to take up. So thank you again for being responsive, and thank you guys for running it as smooth as you could. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. And David Kimball?
Hi, I'm going to kind of read this, make it a little more clear, so I apologize about that. I'm a West Sac resident of over 20 years, and I'm talking in regard to this TBD Fest, which was the kickoff inauguration event for the Barn project of the Triangular Bridge District, which went into high gear in May of 2014 with a $2.6 million allocated from the city to smart growth investors toward the barn project of Fulcrum property, which also has been involved in developing Sacramento Arena. In May or June, we also heard that an additional future development farther south in Pioneer Bluff and Stone Lock region was also planned, as well as a possible second amphitheater down in that area. I have a friend that lives just south of there, is very concerned about that. The launch promoters changed their name from Launch to TBD Fest in June of 2014, which coincides with the city's dealings, and began to promote the event, which was held on October 3rd, 4th, and 5th from 7 p.m. to 12 midnight, a 5-year span, 5-hour, or rather, 5-hour span. To quote Launch on their website, these events are a substantial economic, civic, and brand impact. And the demographic that attended, which came from long distances, the draw was the nationally famous bands. It was very expensive, $250 for 3 days. So not everybody's able to attend these. These aren't, and the biggest sponsors were Budweiser Beer and Sierra Nevada Beer, the biggest corporate sponsors, although there were small local sponsors, but let's accentuate the beer aspect of it. And there was extensive media promotion before and after with a downplay of the noise impacts on the community. Now, amidst all of this hoopla, which voices went unheard? Who were not a part of the corporate business government calculus? Okay, that would be the residents of West Sacramento and Sacramento proper. I live 2/3 of a mile from ground zero as the crow flies, and it was so loud it came through my walls for 3 consecutive nights. Later, 2 of my fellow residents where I live, right next door to me, told me that their children couldn't sleep. And they had to, somehow, where's the noise coming from? The children were asking. And the West Sac Police Department, when I called on Monday, I didn't call during the 3 days, they told me that they'd gotten numerous complaints, in their dispatch line over the phone. In addition to that, I have a friend who lives over in the Southside Park area across the river. And he told me that they could hear it as far out as 10th Street in Sacramento. I mean, that disrupted the Sacramento residents as well. Also, there's workers on Monday morning, I think that point was already made by Mr. Christoph, thank you for that input, that had to get up in the morning to go to work. So Woodstock was held on a farm, and so was Altamont. I'm of that generation, I remember, and there's a reason those were held out in those far rural areas, and that was because of the decibel level.
Mr. Kimball, I need to ask you to come to a conclusion.
Okay, my conclusion is that I'm just asking the same thing this other resident that I'm just following the common good, respect the quiet residents, the motel guests that are not attending the festival, the school children, the workers, and the elders of Sacramento. To my knowledge, it violated the current noise ordinance, section 19.05001, section U of the West Sacramento Municipal Code. And I just would like to ask the City Council to please consider the quality of life of the West Sacramento and Sacramento residents, and answer not only to the corporate and business factions, or please consider the residents in future events of this type.
All right, thank you, Mr. Kimball.
Okay.
All right, so those are all the public comments we have on the item. This is actually not an item for action. It's simply an information item. Are there any other comments or discussion? I think we've heard both a good report about the event and the concerns. And those concerns have been heard. I do feel like some folks feel like it's only been heard if we talk about how awful the whole thing was, and we can celebrate and fix simultaneously. All right, we can enjoy and have a good time and think about what a wonderful event that was. And for the folks that we're trying to recruit for companies like Bayer or Tomra, the tech companies or the creative companies in our town, whose employees demand this sort of kind of cultural experience, that this is key for what we're trying to create in our community. We can fix it while we're doing that. In fact, that's what was happening over the weekend, which is why Saturday was much less of an issue than Friday. Everyone, all hands on deck. What do we do to make this, in the middle of it, make this have less of an impact? And that happened. But the largest takeaway, I mean, as that's happening, as our staff and our sound consultants and the organizers are working those issues through, is a moment for very significant pride and for advancing the objectives that the city has been laying out for years, and that we will be a place where when our young people graduate from high school and go off to college or the military or on some exploration, and that they will want to come back. That they won't feel like that the only option for them is to live in Portland or Austin or San Francisco, but that there is a place for them here, and they are valued, and they are as much a part of our community as those of us who have been here for 20 years as adults, and that we make room for each other in West Sacramento in order to create amazingness and to create possibility. Doesn't mean we don't improve and we don't try to do it right. We will, and I think we've heard that from every sector of the organizers and the departments tonight. But it was a really great thing, and I'm very glad that the TBDFS folks elected to move launch over to our side of the river and to show even some of us who live here what the possibilities were. If you walked around that festival and saw the energy, people's excitement, people's pride, people's imagining about what else could happen in the riverfront and in our community, the riverfront on both sides, it was an extraordinary experience and an extraordinary moment for the city and for the region. So I'm proud of it. All right, so that concludes our entire consent agenda, including item 8. So we're going to proceed then to item 15, which is a public hearing and consideration of Resolution 14-53, renaming a portion of South River Road to Locks Drive in the Stone Lock District. Ms. Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Staff is back before you this evening to complete the renaming process for a portion of South River Road. We have, pursuant to your direction, we have circulated to all affected agencies and departments the proposed street name of Locks Drive. And we did receive comments back or no comments. There were no objections. And we've also notified the only property owner, which is the Successor agency, and they have no objections to the street renaming. The exhibit on the screen shows the portion that's being renamed, and that is the portion of South River Road that exists between Jefferson Boulevard and where the new Mike McGowan Bridge will connect. It is shown in red. It's what we call the westerly leg. The rest of South River Road will stay as named. So with that, we ask you to conduct the public hearing and adopt Resolution 14-53. That concludes my presentation.
Questions before we open the public hearing? All right, then we're going to open the public hearing on item 15. I don't have any requests to speak, but this is a legal public hearing, so does anyone wish to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and return it back to the council. We've discussed this item before, and it's obviously for the purpose of when you come to the intersection of the New Bridge Road and existing South River Road, that every possible option is not signed as South River Road. So it's pretty straightforward. But.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Kristoff.
I would move we adopt Resolution 14-53, renaming a portion of South River Road to Locks Drive.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Kristoff and seconded by Mr. Johannesson. If there's no further discussion, then Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
Councilmember Kristoff?
Yes.
And Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, the motion carries. That brings us to item 16, which is consideration of approval of the Bridge to Housing program. Ms. Richardson.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the report before you tonight seeks council approval and partial funding for the County of Yolo and Yolo County Housing Authority pilot project called Bridge to Housing. This proposed pilot project stems from the need to clear properties of illegal campers in the North Levee area of the city. These properties are just north of the Broderick Boat Ramp. One of the properties is privately owned and recently changed hands, and the other is owned by the city. The subject properties have been cleared of illegal campers on several occasions, and while the process that was used to remove the campers has met legal muster, It is not met with long-term, was not met with long-term success in keeping the property cleared. We've tried to implement security measures, but the cost and expense of doing that, the properties eventually become habitated again. So the property owner who recently acquired what was formerly the Siri property has requested police assistance in removing the trespassers from his property. So in planning for this public safety action, Police Chief McDonald organized a group of staff from the county, housing authority, and a variety of nonprofits, as well as city staff to assist with the evacuation operation. And in doing so, three subcommittees were formed. One was an assessment team that was dealing with assessing who was on the properties and what their needs were. An operational team that was designed to manage and develop the operation on the day of the clearing of the property, and then a housing team. The housing team, which was led by the Yolo County Housing Authority, their mission was to try to find a solution for housing for the individuals who are going to be removed from the property. So the housing team is proposing a plan that we've called Bridge to Housing, and it is an attempt to implement the best practices model of Housing First to address homeless individuals. And the Housing First model calls for just that, providing homeless individuals with housing first before they are assessed for anything else. So the concept would be provide them with housing and then assess them for services that would then lead to permanent supportive housing. So the plan that's being proposed is to relocate the 71 individuals that are occupying the properties and move them into a motel for no more than 120 days, at which point they would be assessed for services, and they would be provided with assistance to find permanent housing. The Housing Authority believes that the conditions that are present in this operational plan would allow for them to put individuals at the top of the list for the housing vouchers. The plan is estimated to cost no more than $100,000, and the proposal is for the county to pay for at least $50,000 of it, and the city would pay no more than a matching share of that. The Yolo County Housing Authority is proposed to be the leasee of the property, and they would have on-site management while the assessment process is taking place. The case managers would be provided by the county. The homeless coordinator that we'll be hiring for CDBG funds, with CDBG funds, will be assisting the county with the coordination of services, which was planned. This is a new approach to a long-standing problem that we've dealt with before, but we haven't been able to, it hasn't been met with long-term success. We have reached out with the Housing Authority to the motels in town to see if there is sufficient rooms available, and we're still working with some of the providers on that. The faith-based and nonprofit community has been intimately involved with this project. They're going to be providing some services, hygiene kits, food, and that kind of thing. Also involved has been Legal Services of Northern California. They've been involved at the outset and are supportive of the plan as proposed. You have a letter in your DS from Alyssa Meyer, who's the managing attorney from Legal Services of Northern California, expressing her support of the project. The target date for the clearing of the North Levee is October 29th. Again, this is a pilot program that is being led by the county and the Yolo County Housing Authority, and the request from them is that we participate as a financial partner at this point. It is a one-time program, and we're going to be developing some metrics to determine the success of it. If it is successful, we might be using that model for further grant funding, or just to test to see if this Housing First model works for us. It would not be repeated in the same location a second time. It's a one-time pilot project for the reasons indicated. There are representatives here from the County of Yolo, and I believe the Housing Authority is still here, as well as some representatives from the nonprofit Project Christian Center, who was also had led the assessment team. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions at this time? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Yeah, Carol, thank you for this. So it sounds like you're going to be trying to create metrics. So we basically have a 120-day span that we're going to be looking at this. What is the discussion about what would make this a success? I mean, obviously, there's the clearing off the river is a big success, and clearing folks out of the neighborhood.
I think success is going to be measured in finding permanent supportive housing. That would be the measure of success, and also getting the individuals the services that they need. We know there's 9 veterans that are out there, and they're eligible for some particular services. So we're going to make sure that they get those. We believe there are a few individuals out there who are in need of mental health services, and we're going to try and get those individuals the mental health services that they need.
How would that work in terms of, there's 138, 132 folks that are homeless, according to the 2013 census, which is obviously, depending on when you take it. Out of those 132, do we have an idea how many rooms would be, how many of those would actually be subject to this?
Well, there's 71 individuals in the subject area that we're
Okay.
doing for the pilot project.
And there would be that many rooms available?
No, we would probably be doubling up with individuals in the rooms.
Okay, but they would be handled one way or another. They would have housing.
Yes, they would.
Okay.
And we're not sure everybody who's on the property is going to take advantage of the program. The indications are that they are. And some of the veterans that we think might be eligible for veteran services may not go into this program. They may be diverted to a veterans program and not be subject to this program.
Okay, so then the services that would be provided, because the city doesn't provide services, but the county does.
Correct.
Would be brought to the folks at these locations.
That's
for the
correct. They're going to have
assessment.
case managers on site.
Okay. So, I mean, in this population, there could be people that don't want to do this.
Correct.
How is that going to be dealt with?
It's a voluntary program. If they do not want to participate, they'll just be removed from the property and moved on,
Okay.
like they were before. There's no guarantee, we can't force them into the program.
Yeah, yeah. Good, good. Thank you.
Mr. Kristoff.
Just a couple of questions, Carol. You've identified, or somebody's identified 71 people,
That's correct.
right? So what happens when we move those 71 people that are on the river now into this particular program? What happens to the next 71 people that come into the river or come into the camping area?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think at this point, the property owner, the private property owner, is going to be more engaged and is going to provide, they're going to be clearing the property of brush and limbing up the area to make it more open, and they'll be, I believe they're going to have security on site, and then we will be probably doing something similar with the property that the city owns.
Okay. I guess the major concern that I have is we have issues on West Capitol Avenue now. And we even heard from Ms. Patel today, or tonight, about some of the issues that are there. By placing more of a burden on West Capitol Avenue, I'm trying to figure out, you know, what are we doing? Or what are we doing to West Capitol Avenue? I mean, we've put in substantial contributions from the Tower Bridge all the way to Jefferson Boulevard. And it seems like if these folks were living on the river, it doesn't seem to be conducive to be walking up and down the street in front of City Hall. Or even if you take it further, what's going to happen to, because I don't believe that counseling and whatever else we try to do is going to have much of an effect. Or there may be, I'm hoping that, especially the veterans, I'm hoping that they are going to receive assistance from veteran groups and other kinds of things, so that it may work for them. But I'm not so sure it's going to work for the rest of the people. And a number of those folks have mental issues, and they drug addiction issues. And I realize they're going to try to work with the county, or the county's going to try to work with them. But if it doesn't work, where do we go? What happens?
To address your first point about walking on West Capitol Avenue, in the past when we've done river cleanups, a lot of times the individuals who were removed from the river find their way onto West Capitol Avenue anyway, because they're just going from one area to another, or they seek to relocate somewhere else in the city. So what we're trying to do is to do something different by trying to provide services to the folks who are interested in finding permanent supportive housing. If they're not interested, they're just going to be asked to move on and given information about where they can go for services. But if they are sincerely interested in trying to find housing, the plan is they'll be living in the motel with on-site management. There'd be house rules. There'll be security on site, and they would be evaluated and then hopefully placed in housing that's appropriate for them. At least that's the plan that's been laid out by the county and the Housing Authority.
Okay. All right, Mr. Ledesma, anything before we take the public comments?
Yeah, just thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions for Carol. And Carol, forgive me, I'm going to ask that couple of questions first, and then I'll put it on mute so I can hear you off of the streaming video, because you're not coming through clearly on the phone, if that's okay. So Mr. Kristoff's point is sort of lands on me as well around what happens to those who don't want the services. And so can you maybe expand a little bit about, first part is, can you expand a little bit about the police role after the cleanup? And maybe, because we know that, yes, they have a propensity maybe to land on West Capitol, but we've even seen folks move downriver, maybe make it towards other parts of the city, and try to find places to live or camp or whatever they're doing somewhere else. So question one is around, if you could expand a little bit on the police role and what you maybe anticipate and how much service that they might get. The second part is around the metrics, or what we see as success. When will we know that folks are moving on? This is a tough issue. We've been trying to deal with this, and it's complex because there's so many different dynamics at play from the folks that need the services. So I'm really sort of after, are we thinking, are you thinking that there's the folks that need help, that want help, right, and take up the services, where if the program is for a certain time period that they're in the hotel, getting the services, and then moving them on to someplace else, that's what I'm trying to get a sense of, is where would they go once they receive the services, and how would we know that they moved on and were able to find some amount of permanent or even more interim housing? If you can take those two questions, I'd appreciate it.
Okay, let me answer your second question first. As far as the metrics, the success will be determined by how many people get permanent housing. The Housing Authority believes that because of the program that before them, they're going to be able to prioritize the individuals for housing vouchers, which is formerly known as the Section 8 program. So not everybody is going to, who gets a Section 8 voucher, is going to be able to find, a landlord that's going to be willing to rent to them, and not everybody is going to qualify for a Section 8 voucher. So they're going to be exploring other means of finding housing for them. So again, the measure of success will be how many get placed. The program is to last no more than 120 days. That's what the funding is estimated to be. Again, for the individuals who don't want services, if they're not going to participate in the program, it's voluntary, and if they're in the program and they don't comply, they'll be asked to leave. Deputy Police Chief Deanna Stevens is here, and she can respond to what the police role would be for those individuals who don't participate in the program and are asked to leave.
Yeah, so thank you. So in response to your first question regarding the role and responsibility of the police, we absolutely understand and accept our responsibility with regards to public safety as well as enforcement of the laws. That one will speak to the actual operation of the site to clean up itself, as well as moving along the illegal campers. We have long learned, and I've been doing this now for 27 years in these camp cleanups within the city, that the efforts that we've made in the past really it's really talked or spoken only to law enforcement. We absolutely recognize that this is not only a law enforcement effort, it's not a law enforcement issue. So we're going to continue to do the enforcement efforts within the city, and we've already stepped that up. So along the West Capitol Corridor, as well as the boat ramp area, the northern Washington district, and other areas of the city where we've experienced an increase in calls for service. One of the things that, that I have to emphasize is we don't really know what this is going to look like. We've not done a program like this in the past. And before, we've just moved them along, and they have actually, taken up residency, if you will, along the corridor itself. And it has created issues. I don't know that this is going to be any different. What I can say, and what we are anticipating in our role with specific regards to this pilot program, is one, we have to monitor what we are seeing in the calls for service and respond accordingly. So we have some sort of measure for how we're going to respond in the future. But also working with the county in the actual housing, wherever that may be, with regards to the security, because we're not just looking at these folks as potential, suspects in any crimes, but also possible victims. So we're kind of trying to look at this in several different areas, but not really just a law enforcement or an enforcement aspect. So hopefully that answers your question.
If I can ask a follow-up question, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So on the enforcement side, there's, and I get your points, and we're dealing with something new. And I want to say, first of all, I'm very supportive of the county working with our city and the housing authority on trying to find a solution. I may be lost in our concern around the impacts of this. We need to, the fact that these agencies came together and with us to help sort of create a solution to this, at least one solution for the people who really need it. I think the people that our community would be most compassionate around. It's important to keep in mind, because I think that we need to keep searching for those solutions. So on the enforcement side, there are those, you're right, who are not going to participate. We don't know where they're going to be. We have past history to sort of weigh upon or lean against in terms of where problems might arise. I just want to make sure we're attuned to two things. One is any of the properties or community members or residents around the properties that will be the housing. So to make sure that their rights and their property is protected in case, which is the second element I want to guard against, is any of those that come in that aren't part of the program but are looking for something different. The folks that from the campsites that get vouchers and can come take part in the 120-day program. You never know who hears about a program and might kind of show up just to try to get additional services or to get them. They may mistake it for free rooms or whatever the case. I just want to make sure we're managing to all that, especially around whatever subject properties were being used, because I think that will be an important part to keep the integrity of the program and to keep the security safe around that property. So that's the one thing I did want to get across in terms of what I hope the police might focus a little bit of attention on.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ledesma. So we're going to take some of the public comments and the agency comments as well. So we'll turn first to Janice Holt. Janice Holt will be followed by Jeff Lyon.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak today. I am speaking on behalf of our Chief Executive Officer, Lisa Baker, who has really been the lead on this project, working with the City of West Sacramento, of course, Legal Services in Northern California, the County Departments of Mental Health, Department of Employment and Social Services, and of course, our social service partners such as United Christian Centers. We think this is really a fantastic collaborative effort, but it is a pilot. We hope that it has great successful outcomes that will provide an opportunity to build bridging homelessness to home. The Housing First model is a critical approach. It's HUD's endorsed has a goal to end homelessness by 2015. I think that's a pretty lofty goal, but if we can just do a little bit right here in West Sacramento, I think that's a good step for the county as a whole, and specifically West Sacramento. We are serving as the housing team. We are the primary housing provider here in the county that serves 30% below median income. We have over 65 years experience working with low-income populations, finding them housing, getting them housed, and keeping them housed. Do we keep every person housed? No, but we are very successful with our outcomes and working with folks, and many of our families do come from homelessness, whether they be individuals or families. We also have already kind of moved forward, as you saw in your staff report. Carol had alluded that we were looking at a management team to provide oversight at the hotels. We've identified a management team that has many, many years of experience in emergency shelter operations. The lead of it, the gentleman, happens to be, used to be a police officer and involved in law enforcement. We think they can provide a lot of support to those families as they transition from the encampment to the hotel. And we've identified others to also work in that management during that time to mitigate any issues while they're housed in the hotel. And then during that time, of course, we'll be working with them and moving them into permanent housing. When we talked about the Housing First model and the Yolo County Housing and how we do our preferences, I just want to let you know that we're governed by our admin plan, and those preferences include being county residents, serving in the military with an honorable discharge, a working preference that includes elderly families who have permanent disability, and also involuntarily displaced by government action. So when she talked about moving to the top of the list, we can see that many of these folks that are out there that are homeless right now might fit 3 to 4 of these preferences, which gives them additional movement up the list. The waiting list is managed by the preferences. So I just wanted to let you know that's governed by our admin plan with the Housing Authority. My time is up, so I'd just like to say we're very supportive of this project. We're excited to be working with everyone, and we hope that you consider this proposal very seriously. Thanks.
Thank you. Jeff Lyon will be followed by Ryan Collins.
Tonight I'm representing the Washington Neighborhood Group. My neighbors and I presented a homeless action plan to all of you almost 1 year ago at the November 6, 2013 City Council meeting. Our plan called for strict enforcement of laws against illegal camping along the riverfront. Now, a full year later, just a few days before Election Day, you decided that removing the illegal camps is finally necessary. Why did you wait so long? Why wouldn't you listen to us, your constituents, when we wanted this done last year? I find out tonight that because a wealthy, influential developer in Sacramento purchased the property, that's one of the reasons you're doing it. What about your constituents? This guy doesn't even live here. Or is this a ploy to protect your council seats in the upcoming election by hiding these people for 120 days? If you had listened to us, your constituents, a year ago, my neighbors and I would not have endured another year of rampant crime and litter in our neighborhoods. And 2 of our neighbors who live near the riverfront would not have been violently stabbed. These 2 neighbors could have been killed. My neighbors and I are against spending any taxpayer funds to provide any homeless services in West Sacramento. You ignored our wishes again by spending hundreds of thousands of taxpayer dollars on your useless homeless action plan, and then you committed hundreds of thousands of dollars more on an unnecessary, redundant homeless coordinator for the city. Now you propose to throw more good money after bad, spending more of our precious taxpayer dollars on a temporary homeless shelter in the disguise of a transitional housing in a motel. This is complete waste of our money. It's like flushing $100 bills down the toilet continuously. These homeless folks will enjoy their free stay in a motel at our expense, continue to intimidate and harass shoppers in the area, and give West Sacramento a big black eye. Then, after the election is over, they will be right back where they were before, camping illegally along the riverfront. You should do the right thing tonight and save our money by transporting the homeless to the existing homeless services already in place in the county, services already paid for by the taxpayers, as we recommended in our homeless action plan. Why do you insist on throwing our money away on redundant services? Your chosen plan tonight is poor fiscal management, and if you vote to throw away another $100,000 in taxpayer money and fail again, you deserve to be replaced.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lai. Next is Ryan Collins. And Ryan Collins will be followed by Nolan Sullivan.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Ryan Collins. I'm Director of Homeless Services at United Christian Centers, which is a West Sacramento nonprofit social services organization. I come to you in support of funding the Bridge to Housing pilot project to relocate and house the homeless residents of the North Levee and Broderick Boat Ramp area. When Chief McDonald convened the series of meetings to find a better way of approaching the situation than the sweeps of years past, it sparked a collaborative and energetic response from representatives of the city, county, state, service providers, and local faith community. This outpouring of effort and resources has been impressive in scale and scope, with everyone gathered bringing something to the table that they could contribute to seeing this done right. I've led the assessment process to understand the population of homeless individuals encamped on the Conrad and city property. I firmly believe that with better information, you make better decisions. As said by Carol, there are 71 persons identified as current residents. I have spoken personally with 66 of them. There are 45 men and 26 women, 9 of them are veterans. They're a chronically homeless population, and by and large, they are long-term residents of the city. Their average length of homelessness is almost 8 years, with an average length of residence on the property of 4.5 years. What is perhaps unique about this homeless community that lives along our river is that they are a community with social structure resembling like a tribal subculture. They have neighbors, leaders, and street family. They watch out for each other, share what resources they have, and protect their camp and keep warm at night with the aid of loyal dogs. We're not dealing with 71 individual agents here. You're dealing with an actual community that is willing to work with us. And there is strength in that community that I suggest we take advantage of to work together to accomplish our common goals. I have spoken, as I said, to 66 of these people myself. Of those 71, 1 intends to move on, 70 intend to participate. Their living conditions are squalid. They have no trash service, no running water. They've made a terrible mess out there. And the last times that these sweeps cleared the property, it resulted in 400 tons of trash and hazardous waste being removed from the site. I have secured the community's cooperation in ensuring that this does not happen again, with a major cleanup event scheduled in 10 days. They are ready and willing to uphold whatever end of the deal is theirs. Homelessness is a very rough life. The longer that someone is homeless, the more likely it is that they will develop or exacerbate mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and physical disabilities. The homeless are also disproportionately likely to be victims of violent crime. 3 of 71 individuals assessed were recovering from broken bones sustained as victims of violence. On Monday, a member of their community who attended GED classes at UCC was shot. This set of conditions places them amongst the most vulnerable of individuals in the community, drastically reducing their life expectancy. I don't really need to elaborate with what happens if we do nothing. They're 43 going on 44. I fully support the best practice that was identified by Janice in working with the Housing Authority on this, and I urge you to do something different, something that will work. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Nolan Sullivan.
Good evening. My name is Nolan Sullivan. Thank you for having me, Mayor Cabalden and council members. I am a division manager for the Yolo County Department of Employment and Social Services. I am here tonight on behalf of County Administrative Officer Patrick Blacklock and the Department of Employment and Social Services Director, Joan Planell, to demonstrate Yolo County's support for the proposed Bridge to Housing pilot program. We've been working side by side and are committed to the City of West Sacramento and our nonprofit partners on this project. We are well aware of the issues at the river and strongly support the Housing First model as a solution to this the Housing First model as a solution to this long-standing problem. County staff will be taking a proposal to the Yolo County Board of Supervisors next Tuesday, October 21st, 2014, to ask for their support on this project. This includes a funding match of $50,000 for the Bridge to Housing program. We will also provide county support in terms of social service programming and assistance from other relevant county departments. We hope you will look favorably on the Bridge to Housing program and want you to know that we're committed to sharing this project with you. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so those are all the public comments. Staff, do you have anything further at this time?
I just wanted to address Councilmember Ledesma's comment about the population. They've all been identified, and the only ones who will be eligible for the program are those that have already gone through the initial assessment that Mr. Collins just mentioned. So we won't be having other people joining in on the program.
All right, then we'll to the council for further discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson.
Thanks. Yeah, Carol, one of the issues that we have with folks along the river is they have animals, and that's been problematic in terms of putting them on a bus or doing anything with them because there's no place, nothing to do, or there's no place for their animals. So what are we doing about that?
Animal Services from the county has been involved also, and the places that we're looking at will accept animals, and with the Animal Services Division is going to be doing, they'll be spay and neutering any animals that aren't already altered, and they'll be cleaning them, doing flea dips, and any other medical treatment that is needed. And the places that we are looking at do accept pets.
Okay. And then the folks' belongings, are they just going to keep that in their rooms or what?
I'm sorry?
Their belongings.
The belongings, I believe there's a process that's being set up where some of the belongings are going to be cleaned and they're going to be given additional clothes to be given, and there'll be a linen exchange once a week with the motel operator. And the belongings that they can have will be kept with them in their room or in a storage area in the motel that's being rented is the plan.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Christoph.
No, I really don't have any other comments other than the ones I made as far as questioning, because I'm very concerned that West Capitol Avenue is going to further fall in a little disrepair. But at the same time, if we have county services and we have all of these other agencies that are, it sounds like trying to step up, we may be able to successfully get a few of these people some kind of housing. This really isn't something that I have a lot of confidence in, but at the same time, I really don't have an alternative. I don't have a different program. I know that there are some people that just want to ship them away, and I know that legally we can't do that. And so I'm really, going to lean on Dina and her people at the police department so that West Capitol Avenue doesn't fall further in disarray. But it'll be something that I keep very close track of for the next 120 days. I'm going to keep very close track on, West Capitol, because the majority of complaints that I'm receiving today pertain to West Capitol Avenue. And people don't feel safe. I go down West Capitol Avenue a lot for whatever I do. And I see a lot of characters, really characters, walking up and down the street. I see a lot of things happening over here at Safeway. Rayleigh's is even having some issues, and I talk to the shoppers that go in there, and it seems like Rayleigh's headquarters is trying to make a difference, but it just seems like it's something we just, for whatever reason, we can't get our hand around. We've got some apartment complexes and things that are on Merkley that you see from West Capitol Avenue, and good things aren't happening there. And, and people ask me all the time, well, why don't the police go in and, kick them out and move them on or whatever? And, well, I don't know the property owner. I don't know how much rent they pay there or anything like that, but I know that there are issues there, and I just don't want to see those issues exacerbated by some kind of a pilot program that we're trying to put in place that doesn't work within 120 days, and we're back at square one. That's what I really have some concerns with. And so, but I mean, it's something I'm willing to take a chance on because we do have so many of the county agencies involved and so many of the housing advocates involved. Anytime I get a letter from Northern California Legal Services, I take a second look. That one really sort of scares me a little bit. But at the same time, it got Yolo County Housing Authority, got our police department, probation, all the other things that are there, and especially the mental health and the things that are in close proximity. I'm hoping these people aren't going to have to walk from the motel, walk down West Capitol Avenue and down Jefferson Boulevard to get to those facilities. I hope that there's something, bus system, transportation, whatever it may be. I'm hoping there's something that can be plugged in place so that, number one, they get there, and then number two, that it just doesn't become an eyesore as far as West Sacramento is concerned.
Mr. Ledesma?
Yeah, just a couple of closing comments, and I just want to, again, the fact that we have the county and bring in the services, a program, a possible solution to at least one segment of this population is positive. there's no magic bullet in this, and I think we just have to keep that in mind. I too, with Mr. Kristoff, am concerned about West Capitol Avenue. But if the county, the way this program is set up, that we'll be able to manage the property, possibly have somebody on site. The police department is coordinating with them. I feel confident in that, and I feel confident in the partnership to kind of at least take 120 days to see if this is something that can get some of these people to move on. I think that's what I'm trying to keep top of mind. There's a population there that wants to move on, and we have these services. For lack of better term, they're prepaid. These are taxpayer dollars on folks and services that are available, and we just need to get them there. And so if we can take this opportunity to make that happen, I'm supportive of that. I just want to make sure that we respond and we learn and we as quickly as possible. In that, if there's some success, how can we leverage that, and how quickly can we know that and turn it into another initiative? Or if it isn't working or something's not right, how quickly we respond to that. That's what I'll be looking for in this. But again, the partnership, the fact that we're able, the county has stepped in, the housing authority stepped in and said, let's try a solution. But it's a welcome initiative. So I look forward to seeing how it goes.
All right, I agree with all the comments that my colleagues have made, especially Mr. Kristoff's sort of assessment of the situation where we've come, and no over optimism about what we will accomplish. But we through the police department have invited our partners at the housing authority in the county and the faith and social services community to the table with an insistence that we get real things done and solve the problem, start taking chunks out of it, and they've stepped forward to do that, without insisting that we become a social services provider ourselves, and respecting that one of our central responsibilities in this matter is public safety, for both the protection of those homeless individuals as victims, as has been described, but also the impact on the rest of the community. And so I think everyone has brought forward this proposal with respecting those different roles and objectives that we have together with something that's tangible. And it may not work. It probably won't work in some respects, given what's happened, other attempts elsewhere in the country. But it's the best. It's the best option that we've had before us in some time to try to not just to do something to do something's sake, but if as you said, if a handful of folks we get out of this cycle, that will have been a success. So I'm supportive of it as well. And I share some of the concerns, and I would like to see our metrics be a bit broader. All the partners will have their own metrics for their own participation, of course, but I think for us, the placement of into housing, long-term supportive housing, is a key one, as you said, Carol. I'm also interested in, and this is more of a housing authority issue directly, but we've raised it internally as well here before, which is if we're shifting the distribution of vouchers, what we do want to be sure is that we haven't pushed any other vulnerable citizens in our community into homelessness because they're unable to get the voucher because we've shifted the priorities around. We're not interested in simply moving around who is homeless and who isn't and shifting people around. So I would like to I hope the Housing Authority will be able to give us some sense, and of course their own board, some sense of what the impacts of those priority changes might be. But on West Capitol in particular, I'd like to see the reports as they come back to us on metrics to include an assessment and a report on indicators from West Capitol. So police reports, incidents, calls, code enforcement issues, so that we can track whether we're seeing an upsurge or potentially a decrease as a result of this work, so we can get a sense of the impact that it is having, if there is one, on West Capitol Avenue, has been said. And then the flip side of the long-term supportive housing is the extent to which the property gets reoccupied, or other properties become settled by the same population. That's a downside metric, but it's one. I mean, the purpose for one of the purposes here is to make a permanent impact on these properties and others like them and to show that we can. So I'm interested in that. My eyes wide open about what's possible here, but I want to make sure that we're learning the full range of lessons. This does not have to solve everything in order to be a solution, but we ought to be tracking its impacts in a variety of these domains to see what we can in terms of learning about its impact. And because I know some of our partners will be interested in this, I'm less interested in the sort of how many touches the homeless individuals have had with services. We've had this conversation before. I mean, unless we're actually resolving a mental health problem or getting long-term supportive care, the fact that there's been 17 counseling sessions it ought to be of interest to the county. It's not of interest to me if it's not changing if it's not actually changing life on the ground for these individuals and for the folks in the neighbors of the communities in which they're in. So for me, that if we're not solving these other issues, and you come back and say, yeah, but we got 16 counselor visits as a result, that's not a win to me. So I just for me at least, laying out some of my expectations around what the performance metrics are. I'm hoping it will succeed. So this is not a large amount of money if it can actually make a dent in what may be the most enduring social problem in our country in the modern era. If we can figure out some solutions that work on the ground in our community, it's certainly worth a small investment. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Thank you. Yeah, just one afterthought. It sounds like folks in the community have a relationship with the names, at least, of most of the homelessness, it sounds like. So, one of the things I would like to see is we may be able to use names as a baseline, because one of the things we don't want to have is create a vacuum that makes an attraction for other folks to fill in that vacuum. So we have a chance now to kind of get an isolated, basically a good head count associated with names on our homeless population. And then, 120 days out, kind of see where we are and then see if there's an influx of new homelessness, where those homeless people came from. Are they from West Sacramento, or are they coming from the other side of the river? So just to kind of get an idea of what's the dynamics there.
Christoph?
Just a comment. Since this is aired and it's going out to the TV land, so to speak, for the accusation that this action would be taken today because of political purposes is ludicrous. I mean, for anybody out there that understands Politics 101, this would never come if it wasn't trying to solve some kind of a problem. So, it's just, it's sort of a sad commentary that someone would try to politicize this kind of an issue at this particular time. Thank you.
All right, if there's no further discussion then, is there a motion on item 16?
No further discussion then, is there a motion on item 16? No further discussion then?
Mr. Ledesma, are you watching us on TV? Or?
Yes, it is. Take it off.
Okay, thank you. Can that count as, are you seconding Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
That was a second.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
No.
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, roll call vote. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Councilmember Christoph?
Yeah.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
And Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That motion carries. Thank you. Make it a success. All right, item 17 is consideration of first reading of ordinance 14-11, levying and apportioning the special tax in Community Facility District R for Bridge District Services. Mr. Bloomberg.
As reported on the agenda item number 5 on your agenda tonight, on October 8th, we had a special election to allow the voters in the Bridge District to consider establishing a Community Facility District R, the Maintenance Services District. Special election was held, which received 74.8% approval, which is a pretty good level of support, considering the property owners were going to be assessing themselves a special tax for maintenance. Tonight, we're just bringing before you the first reading of the ordinance. This isn't a public hearing, it's just the reading of the ordinance. The second reading would occur on November 5th, after which the ordinance would be deemed passed The ordinance would then be effective 30 days after that, November 5th, second reading. Again, this district will provide property owner contribution to the overall budget for maintaining public facilities in the Bridge District.
All right, are there questions for Mr. Blumberg? All right, we have no request to speak, so is there a motion on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I would move that the city conduct its first reading of ordinance 1411, levying and apportioning the special district tax in CFDR, Bridge District Services.
All right, it's been moved by Mr. Kristoff and seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson. Seeing no, and hearing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
Councilmember Kristoff?
Yep.
And Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. That motion carries. That brings us to item 18, which is consideration of the first reading of ordinance 14-12, establishing infrastructure financing district number 1, the Bridge District area.
Yeah, this item also deals with the first reading of an ordinance establishing what will be the city's first infrastructure financing district. We call it number 1. On October 8th, a special election was also held in which property owners considered the establishment of the district. It received a 83% support from the qualified electors. It's going to be the city's first district. It'll be the third IFD formed in the state of California, and it's also going to complete a major element in the city's adopted community investment action plan. So again, tonight we're just bringing before you the first reading of the ordinance, and the second reading also would occur on November 5th, and the ordinance would be effective 30 days after that. Again, the IFD tax increment will have a base year of 2014-15, the current tax year we're in, and a portion of the tax increment, approximately 50% of the amount that comes back to the city from new assessed value, would be a district revenue held by the city for funding of public infrastructure improvements.
Questions or discussion? It's a ministerial action. It's obviously a big deal. A lot of work's gone into getting us to this point, but this one's a pretty simple one.
It's sort of exciting being one of the lead IFDs, and so it's sort of exciting to see how it's all going to work. But I would move that we conduct the first reading of ordinance 1412, creating IFD number 1 Bridge District area and adopting an infrastructure financing plan.
I'll second.
All right, that's been moved and seconded. Hearing no further discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
Councilmember Kristoff?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson? Yes. Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
That motion carries. I neglected to report earlier, actually, that we had a meeting of the Yolo County mayors on Monday of this week, I think Monday of this week, and the only reason I'm mentioning it now is one of the items was a proposal that we consider a countywide city-county master tax sharing agreement. Yeah, so that was my reaction to Mr. Kristoff.
Right, yeah. Tell them to negotiate better when they form.
Yeah, so it will not be on a future mayor's agenda
Okay.
after that meeting. So, all right. So item 19 is annual review of the city's investment policy and consideration of proposed amendments. Mr. Wright.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm just going to do a very quick introduction of this item, and then Mr. Bloomberg, our public finance manager, will present the actual proposed modifications. As the council is aware, public finance for the city has been focused the last 3 years really on 2 major items, although there's a subcomponent. So the one was the elimination of redevelopment and all the impacts and the losses that were caused to the city because of that. And as you have just taken action tonight on the forming of the first IFD and the support of the property owners, we're hoping that we're coming out of that and starting to move in a more positive direction. And then the other thing we've been doing is obviously taking advantage of the low interest rate environment and trying to refinance the city's debt with the council direction of not extending the debt or incurring additional debt. So being good financial stewards. This year, staff has been focusing also on opportunities to begin to invest the city's treasury in ways that are obviously safe and maintain the needed liquidity, but also start to provide some yield, because the money has been kept in Lafe and Kemp for the last 4 or 5 years, which has been, again, the right thing to do given the economy and the recession, but we haven't been earning much money, and so we're looking for opportunities to try to increase the yield. In doing that, one of the directions I gave to staff was to review our investment policy very thoroughly to make sure that as we begin to invest money differently, that we have all the safeties in place that need to be, and that the council gives us the policy direction. So tonight, Mr. Bloomberg will go through some of the proposed changes, and we'll start to try to invest our money in ways that will continue to be safe, but will also yield a bit more money. So, Paul?
I have a few slides that I'm going to run through. I promise I will be brief on these. Next slide, please. There's no requirement, hard, fast requirement that the investment policy come to you on an annual basis, but it's recommended by the State Treasurer's Office and the Government Finance Officers Association. And so the investment policy is really, it defines the parameters of how we manage public funds. And we are in complying with state government code. There's very strict rules about how you can invest government funds. And then we try to follow the best practices. Again, the GOFOA provides that guidance to us. And then the Treasurer's Office really gets involved in reviewing the investment policy, particularly the changes that we're recommending that you adopt tonight. Next slide, please. Just real quickly, the major objectives of the policy deal with safety, liquidity, and yield. And so safety is paramount. And so the type of investments you're looking at are ones that have they're fixed income investments. They don't fluctuate the way equities like stocks do. And so if you hold on to them until they mature, you will have your principal and your interest back. And so those are the types of safe investments we're looking at. In terms of liquidity, we have to make sure that there are enough funds to fund operations of the city, payroll, accounts payable, and cash flowing major infrastructure projects. And so finally, at the end, yield is really the third consideration. And so because we do have a large amount of surplus funds to invest, we do want to start looking at yield, as Phil said, and boosting it over what we're getting in Lafe and Camp. Next slide, please. So standards of care, we're not changing anything in the policy. And if you've looked through the attachment to your agenda report, you've looked at the delegation of authority, which is to your investment officer, and that's Phil Wright, the Director of Administrative Services. And obviously, some things are delegated down to the managers and to the accountants. So a number of folks are involved in the investment activities. Issues of ethics and conflict of interest are addressed in the policy. You don't want to be in a situation where the staff conducting your investments are also trading on the side with any of the investment companies, things like that. And then finally, all the staff doing investments are expected to follow the prudent person standard. And so they're expected to follow the adopted investment policy, they're expected to follow internal procedures, and they're required to do due diligence on the investments. So it's a standard that we all have to adhere to managing public funds. Next slide, please. Internal controls are a key issue, and those are the ones that I just want to focus in on a second. One of the changes we're proposing is that there be an internal controls document. That isn't a requirement in the policy right now. And so the internal control document would cover the things that you're looking at there. Control of collusion to prevent theft or fraud. And one way you do that is you separate the transactions. So the people ordering the trades and releasing funds are different from the folks who are doing the accounting and record keeping. Then also amongst the staff, we're authorizing the transfer of funds. Of course, the Director of Administrative Services authorizes the transfer, but the people who release and collect money are two different individuals, so you can't have people moving money without other people knowing about it. And then, you know, things like avoiding physical delivery of securities, they don't come to the city. The securities we purchase go to a safekeeping bank, and I'll cover that in a minute. Next slide, please. In terms of safekeeping, not any major changes here. I would point out that delivery versus payment is the process that we use to transfer securities, and it really means that one of our broker-dealers, our qualified broker-dealers, are going to transfer these things to a third party for safekeeping. They don't come directly to the city, to a staff person, to an individual. And then in terms of third-party safekeeping, BNY Mellon is our custodial bank. We did take proposals from various firms, and we selected BNY Mellon. And there are some additional policies that we're adding to the investment policy that address the custodial bank and requirements that are put on the custodian. Next slide, please. In terms of investment types, this is the big change to your investment policy. So right now, the investment policy says, whatever the state allows, you can invest in it. And so GFOA and their sample policy, their model policy, recommend actually putting into your policy the types of things you invest in. So anybody can pick up the policy. They don't need to go to the arcane government code to find these things. And so I won't go into each one of them, but, you know, there are things that I think you could recognize are typically, you know, safe and collateralized investments. Next slide, please. Again, you know, this is kind of the complete list. It's not too broad. It's very narrow. Next slide, please. In terms of performance, there's some minor changes related to some collateralization issues on some types of investments. Again, collateral has to be federal government backed, or if it's a state or local government security backing an investment, it's got to be AA grade. And then finally, there are various reporting requirements. One of the changes we have to performance is benchmarking. And so right now, your policy says that we're going to have LAIF as our benchmark, and that's a state of California pooled investment fund that's run by the treasurer, the state treasurer. We think that we should add another standard to that, so we're going to add federal treasuries as a standard. So we'd be looking at 2 and 5 years on treasuries, because really, if we were going to invest 2 or 5 years, we wouldn't invest in LAIF. If we wanted something safe, we didn't have to worry about it. It would be treasuries. That would be the safe kind of comparison to LAIF. And so we are recommending that in the amendments attached to your report. Next slide, please. I just wanted to point upon this one. I like this slide because it's a positive slide. So you have the months of the year along the bottom there. In millions of dollars, you have the amount of Treasury funds within any given month. And the vertical lines there are 4 years. So we have fiscal year 11 through June 30th of 14. So you can see from the vertical bars, any given month, the trend is to have an increase in the amount of Treasury funds we have. And so that's a good sign. That means our revenues are increasing. And again, it's more money to run operations of the city, but then it's more funds that we can invest as well. But you'll see that there are variations throughout the year. You know, you'll see a pickup in January and June when we get our property tax in. And so you'll see that as we draw down those funds, you'll see dips through the year. So we need to be very careful as we invest the Treasury because of those variations throughout the year. We need to time maturity of securities to be when we're low on money, and we need to make sure that we always have enough funds to run operations of the city. Next slide, please. So where are we at? What are the benefits? This slide just shows you the benefits of taking funds out of LAIF and CAMP, which is in the first column there, pooled investments, and putting it in longer-term securities. And so to date, we've invested $14.3 million. Our average return has gone from 0.23, basically the LAIF rate, to 1.40. And so that's predominantly negotiated CDs, some treasuries, and some federal agency investments. And so you have an increase in earnings of about $167,000 annually. And so our first target is to get to $20 million in investments and stop there. And then, quite frankly, we're going to have to do some sophisticated cash flow modeling in the future to make sure that if we go beyond, if we start investing more, that we're still able to cash flow major projects, major public projects that we see coming along. And that concludes the presentation.
All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Thanks, Paul. When we get our annual accounting, CPA certified financial reports, they get into internal controls, don't they? Do they, it's been a while since I've taken a look at it, but do they dig down into the investment strategy and the risks? And because I thought that all of our CPA reports have been clean.
They have, and yes, our comprehensive annual financial report does address our investments. You know, in the past, it hasn't been very complicated because everything's been invested in these pool funds. And so, you know, starting this year with the audit that's now underway, the auditors will be looking to ensure that the types of investments are consistent with the state government code and with our investment policy. So the answer is yes.
And then also the internal control policy that you're going to be drafting is going to be, I guess, augment that report as well.
That having the internal policy will be relevant to the auditors as well. That's correct.
All right.
Mr. Ledesma, do you have any questions? Or
no questions.
All right. Well, I mean, I have no questions either, although I appreciate the report and the update to the policy. It is about time, and the changes all make sense. We were both on the council. The last time we really dived into this was, I want to say, right after the Orange County bankruptcy, when we did a lot of changes to some of these policies as well. So it's definitely time for a refresh. And you know, and so I appreciate the depth of the presentation and the scope of the changes that are proposed here. They make a lot of sense, both to assure appropriate protections and controls and to maximize the taxpayers' return on the revenues that they have. So, anything else? Then is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
yeah, there is one.
I will move the recommended action.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Seeing no further questions or discussion, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
Councilmember Kristoff?
Yes.
Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, that motion carries. Thank you. That brings it to the council calendar. Ms. Richardson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is our last meeting of the month, and the city school 2x2 that was scheduled for tomorrow has been canceled, so that item that just got canceled today. And I wanted to point out also that the October 22nd city county 2x2 was also canceled at the request of the county. And finally, at the end of the month, we're going to have primarily a media event for the CEMEX silo demolition, so more information will be coming forward on that. The election is coming up on November 4th, and good luck to everyone who's running.
All right, any questions on the calendar? Seeing none, city manager report.
Mayor and council members, Councilmember Sandine is not here, obviously, to make this report, but she and I joined the Metro Chamber last week for a study mission in Nashville. It was very, very insightful, particularly the way they do business development there with the Entrepreneur Center. The Metro Chamber is going to continue to flesh that idea out. We spent a lot of time on a bike ped bridge in Nashville, how they planned and funded that as a potential parallel effort for the I Street Bridge once that replacement bridge is done and cars are moved off of I Street, there is an approach that Nashville used to have a bike ped on an older bridge. And then also, I just got an email, our River Cats Major League affiliate, the Giants won their game tonight 6-4, so they lead the series 3-1.
All right, any questions on the city manager report? City attorney report? Staff directions, members of the council? Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
It's not really a staff direction, but I just wanted an announcement that West Sacramento is hosting a jobs fair coming up on October 29th. It's 11 to 2 p.m. at the Galleria. And this is brought by the Yolo County Department of Employment and Social Service, the City of West Sacramento, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Yolo County Workforce Investment Board. And they're expecting more than 35 employers and apprenticeship programs, and these employers are ready to hire.
All right. And we have no future agenda item requests, so hopefully, Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson, there's a motion to adjourn. Mr. Ledesma, we're going to need you on this one.
I will.
Second it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So it's been moved to second that the meeting be adjourned. All those in favor, sorry, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Ledesma?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johannesson?
Yes.
Councilmember Christoph? Oh, Mayor Cabaldon?
Yes. All right,
Okay,
that motion carries 3 to
3-1.
3 to nothing.
You're
All
lucky
right.
I was here. You needed the quorum.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you for being a part of the meeting, Mr. Ledesma.
Thank you for your patience.
All right, the meeting is adjourned.